Welcome to another episode of Unscripted with DaSco Learning, where we help professionals grow in their communication, their leadership, overall confidence through intelligent learning. I'm Dave.
And I'm Scott. And today we've got a really important topic. We're going to talk about something that affects all of your relationships, it affects work, it affects communication, and that is emotional intelligence.
Now, let's be clear. IQ is different than EQ. IQ can certainly help you get the job. EQ can help you keep it, grow through it, and help lead through it.
There's statistics that highlight the fact that 90% of top performers have higher levels of EQ, emotional intelligence. More than 50% of performance in all types of jobs is reliant upon emotional intelligence.
Those with higher emotional intelligence simply earn you more within your annual pay.
And it's so much more than just being nice. It's not just about being patient and nice. It has a lot to do with knowing yourself and understanding other people. And your responses to situations are often the things that help people understand, either consciously or subconsciously, whether or not you're high in emotional intelligence or perhaps low in emotional intelligence. And this dramatically affects your peer relationships, your professionalism, your ability to react in the moment. All of those things come into play.
Yeah. And so today, we're going to focus on the 4 essential areas of emotional intelligence and how you can build those skills to be even more effective.
We're going to talk about AI tools that can help build your emotional intelligence. And we're even going to talk about the exact emotions that pop up the most whenever you're trying to identify whether or not you or someone else around you needs to improve on their emotional intelligence and how it affects communication. So hopefully you leave here today with some actual tips to empower you to continue going forward and advancing your soft skills, your own career, and your communication skills.
So Scott, I got a quick question for you. When was the first time you realized that emotional intelligence wasn't just a buzzword?
I went to a giant conference for work, and all of the executives were up on stage. Now, this is a big Fortune 500 company. All the executives were up on stage, and they started taking questions from the audience, and they started fielding all kinds of questions. A few people in the audience started asking some very heavy-hitting questions, challenging a couple of things, and I saw in the moment some executives react very defensively when they didn't know the answer or didn't have an immediate solution. And I noticed other leaders handle those questions with grace, dignity. They showed that they wanted to understand the problem a little bit better. They showed reassurance and empathy. They showed that, hey, I might not have the answer, but I will get it for you. And they didn't stumble. They didn't get in their own headspace and get defensive. And that's when I started to realize, wow, this has a major role in how we view our leadership team, the people around us. And that was one of the first times I realized, wow, this is a big deal. This is something that can really impact your career, even at an executive level.
That's why emotional intelligence is really the golden thread between all of the most effective executives out there. The number one characteristic is emotional intelligence.
It's not what degree they have. Mm-hmm. Not all executives have the same exact business degree, marketing degree, or finance degree. There's not a common thread there. There's not a common thread in what school they went to. There's not a common thread in how they were raised or the size of their family growing up or the things they did in high school from an activity standpoint. It was emotional intelligence was the most common thread.
Yeah. And that's why, going back to saying that IQ is very different than EQ, the top executives out there, they aren't necessarily, those entrepreneurs that are making millions or billions. They're not the smartest in the room. They surround themselves with folks that are brilliant, but they just understand how powerful emotional intelligence is. So what do you say we start by just defining it? Before we dive into these 4 specific areas, let's define emotional intelligence.
There's a couple main parts to it. to understand. There's personal competence, which is about self-awareness and self-regulation. We're going to dig into the regulation part and provide some tips on how to regulate your emotions more effectively. And then there's social competence, which is about your understanding of the people around you. Empathy, relationship management. Those are the two aspects of it.
Yeah. So in simple terms, EQ is really just understanding your feelings, how to convey those feelings in an appropriate manner.
Just like a lot of the skills Dave and I talk about when it comes to communication or leadership or any other soft skill you're looking to grow, these are things that you can train and rehearse and develop. It's not something you're born with. These are skills that you can work on, which is why it's really important for all of us to engage in these practices. And that's why Dave want to share some of the tools and tips to continue advancing these things, because those executives at some certain points in their career, that executive that got up on stage and handled that tough situation, handled that tough question, and navigated with empathy and came up with solution or step one to that solution on the spot, those executives might not have handled that 10 years prior or 15 years prior or even 2 years prior. These are skills that are gained over time. We can all grow from those.
All right. So chapter 1, self-awareness, recognizing what you're feeling when you feel it. Now, this is all about regulating, recognizing ultimately your emotions that you're going through and how you can adapt based on those emotions.
Let's talk about some of those emotions. What are some of the emotions that we come across on a daily basis where we actually are living them, or we see other people live them, especially in a work environment? And we've all had a variety of different emotions at work. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we do a better job of regulating those than other times.
Yeah.
It's easy when things are going well, but when things aren't, that's when our emotional intelligence can show up negatively.
I can think about one, and that is resentment. When you think about growing in your career, we've all been to a point where we feel like we're ready for the next step, and we go through an interview process, and we know there's a lot of qualified candidates, and we believe that we are the person for that role, and we don't end up getting it. And so what does that feel like?
And resentment is a sibling to frustration. And frustration is another one that shows up quite a bit. I have a perfect plan. I've been working on this plan, this project, this presentation for a really long time. And then you have the audacity to challenge it in front of this entire group of my peers. Now I'm frustrated. I'm a little bit angry. And that starts to show up in how I respond to that challenge from a coworker on what I'm working on. That can certainly set your career back in those moments, in those public moments. That can really challenge you and make it harder for you to be respected by your peers or be seen as your peers as someone who, quote unquote, has it together. And that's where emotional intelligence shows up.
Yeah. Disappointment. We get disappointed, similar situation where maybe in a sales role where we didn't land that big sale. We get disappointed in ourselves rather than changing your mindset into, I failed. How did I fail? What caused me to not close that sale? And what could I do differently? And learning from that as like, this is actually a positive. I can learn from why this didn't happen and then adjusting your approach to then be more successful the next go around.
Things are easy when life is smooth. But when things get either really, really good or really, really bad, that's when a lot of times we can really assess each other's emotional intelligence. We've both been in sales for a lot of years. And there's been some months where it feels like it's the easiest thing on the planet. It shows accomplishment. It's a great feeling. We've seen people in those moments not acknowledge the success of their team or their employees and take full credit for those moments. That's a lack of emotional intelligence. To not involve your team in those moments because you're swept up in how awesome you are. And there's also on the opposite end, when you've had rough months in sales, maybe you struggled to meet a goal and we've completely lost sight of the goal, been shown a lot of frustration, shown a lot of anxiety, sadness, maybe lack of ability to get motivated to start over again and come up with a new plan and solve the problem. So in those high and low moments, that's where you see a lot of times people show these gaps in emotional intelligence, and we've all been there.
I can also think of being overwhelmed as another kind of trigger that sometimes we say, I'm stressed out. Being stressed out coincides with the overwhelming feeling. And if you just take a step back to recognize that if I break this down into what does this really mean to me? How can I overcome this feeling of overwhelmingness, stress? It really just helps you understand that I can prioritize how I can navigate this feeling of overwhelmingness and put it into a plan.
So frustration, anxiety, nerves, feeling overwhelmed, bitterness, resentment, those are all emotions that when you're feeling those, if you can identify that you're feeling those in the moment, that's step one to regulating those emotions and becoming more emotionally intelligent. Be aware. Keep an eye out for how those things come about, and you'll certainly be in a much better position to solve those problems as you go forward. Now, there's some AI apps out there for you. As Dave and I like to do, we want to provide you guys with tools, and AI is a huge part of how we can all better ourselves going forward and make ourselves better communicators, more successful at work, more successful in our personal lives. And so here's some more tools for you. Dave, what's an AI tool that can help you self-regulate?
Yeah, one that I use that is comfortable, it's easy, it's Replica. That's with a K. All right. Now, I set this up as my own personal coach to help me work through feelings, right? And being more self-aware. If I'm in a certain situation and I just need some simple help figuring out how do I get through this, I will use Replica to ask questions and have it help coach me through what I'm feeling, how can I overcome this. So that's one that I personally use and I think I'm a fan of.
That's great. There's also one called Mood Notes that is a journaling tool. It's a great app to help you journal your emotions, which, like we talked about, if you can identify what you're feeling and when you're feeling it, that is a huge help in that step one in understanding how to improve it and become more emotionally intelligent. So that's a really good one to use as well. You might be like Dave and I, entrepreneurs, building a business, and guess what? There's going to be some challenges and there's going to be some frustration when you start to face a lot of unexpected things that you hadn't thought through and strategized yet. So you're going to have a ton of opportunity to face moments where you can monitor your emotional intelligence. This is also true for a lot of first-time leaders out there, people that have teams for the first time and employees for the first time. Your ability to identify and be aware of your emotions is really important. If you want to be able to empathize with your team, which is a very key, it's a skill. Being able to empathize with your team is a really important skill to have if you want to be a motivational leader, an inspirational leader that can connect with the team. That's really important. Or even if you're a business professional out there, maybe you have a team, maybe you don't. Maybe you interact with clients all day and customers all day. That could be frustrating too. And they can throw you for a loop and they can set you back emotionally. No matter who you are, there's really important for you to be self-aware and in the moment, understand how you're feeling.
Yeah. So step one, we've talked about, it's self-awareness, understanding those emotions. Now you talk about how do you regulate, the self-regulation around that. What does that look like? You've identified it. Now, what do I do? So it's not just reacting. It's responding in a way, understanding your feelings, but it doesn't come off as though you are frustrated, you're disappointed, you're stressed out, so on and so forth. So what does that look like?
If you're able to be aware in the moment that you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling a certain way that we talked about, you're feeling a certain emotion that we discussed, a lot of communication, a lot of effective communication revolves around your ability to pause, take a deep breath, and a great tool to use to turn that around is to start asking more questions. Be curious about what's going on as opposed to feeling like you have to have the right answer right now or else. And being curious can regulate your emotions dramatically because now I'm involved in it. I want to be part of the solution. I want to learn more. And that creates a lot of empathy as you talk. And it also creates a lot of reassurance too. And sure enough, empathy, reassurance, two great skills to have when it comes to communicating with employees, communicating with customers, or especially when you're up on a big stage and people have questions or they want to challenge what it is you're thinking and how you're going about solving a problem. That can be really helpful.
And that really takes us into the next piece, which is the social awareness. And this is where you will use empathy and other types of skills that will, or behaviors that will help to show that you care. Because it's not just understanding your own emotions, it's understanding the individual or the audience that you're working with and their emotions. So that's the next piece that we need to jump into.
This is a skill that a lot of newer leaders struggle with. When you're given a team for the first time and you haven't had necessarily access to professional training. And a lot of big companies can provide a lot of training and learning, and they have resources to help with this. But even at big companies, sometimes this is not necessarily something taught or provided very specifically. It's not feedback that people give very often. A lot of the feedback that we get at work has a lot to do with results, has a lot to do with the project that we're working on, deadlines, that sort of thing. But when we talk about leadership feedback and soft skill communication, this is really important feedback to understand. How much empathy do I show to my team when we're talking through what we have to do?
I always say that in order to build strong relationships and have the trust and the connection emotionally, you have to show empathy. You have to show that you care about that individual. I can think back to earlier on in my career, coaching a leader that was extremely intelligent, well-spoken, but she could not connect with her team, and her team they were not consistent with their performance. And a lot of that had to do, as I was talking with the leader and understanding where that disconnect was, it was simply that she was not coaching and leading her team in a way that built that trust in the relationship, and they didn't feel as connected with her in conversations with them. And again, ultimately, you can be brilliant, but if you're not socially aware of the empathy, the relationship, and how you're connecting, it certainly can work to your disadvantage.
There is a psychological safety that comes about when your leader is empathetic towards the team. And if you want the team to address truths and get to the root cause of problems when dealing with things, you have to create an environment of psychological safety. Otherwise, you'll just get to a point where the people around you just tell you what they think you want to know and move on. And because of that, you might not solve the real problem that's going on within the project, or in order to meet deadlines or get to the result that we need to get to. I have a cousin. She is not only a senior director at a big company, she's also a great mom. And there's something she told me long before I had kids. She had a couple kids, and she was telling me the story one day about how her son, on their way home from school in the car, she asked how his day was. And he said something that startled her. And we've all had those conversations. If you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. Somebody said something nasty to me, or somebody pushed me or shoved me, or somebody said X, Y, or Z, and you go, wait a second, what happened? And as a parent, you have this immediate reaction. I got to solve this problem. What happened? Who said this? Why did this happen? Did you get in trouble? You either might want to be mad at your child, or you might want to be mad at someone else for parenting their child in a way that hurt your child. And I remember her telling me this, and he said something to her that was a little bit outrageous. And she just calmly asked a question. What do you mean? Tell me more. What exactly did they say? What did you say? And I sat there going, oh my God, how did you have the patience to do that? I immediately want to jump out of the car and go to his school and try to fix this problem myself. And she was so cool, calm, and collected about it. Now, she told me later, she was like, I was freaked out. I couldn't believe that he told me this happened at school. But she also has learned that if you shut down that psychological safety and you make it so that people around you can't feel safe in telling you what's really going on, then they'll stop telling you. And it was way more important for her to just continue to have a relationship and dialogue where you can talk about these things than it was for these things never to be brought up again.
Such a good point.
Just to fix that one problem. Sure enough, she's a senior director at a big company, and I'm sure a lot of her professional success has a lot to do with her ability to think like that in the moment under duress.
And I look at that as people want to be around other individuals and build relationships with individuals that are really easy to talk to. And when you think about those who exude the frustration and they tend to fly off the handle because they let their emotions get the best of them, those are the folks that are hard to build relationships with. And I want to really talk more about like the relationship building component of emotional intelligence. Scott, what's one behavior that high EQ leaders demonstrate when it comes to relationship building and emotional intelligence?
They stay curious in difficult conversations. And those are the times when those are the times when people challenge you, or you know you're going to be challenged, or you know someone's going to disagree with you, or you know that someone's going to have to they're going to take feedback the wrong way. All of those moments are when we become maybe frustrated because things aren't easy. We start to become anxious and nervous. And so when people respond in ways we're not expecting, we can immediately show frustration. And that's when it's really helpful for people to be curious. Ask more questions. By asking more questions, you calm yourself down. You regulate your emotions more effectively. And by the way, you're building a relationship with that person in a much more healthy way where you're solving real problems, getting to the root cause of the issue, and probably coming a lot closer to winning them over and making sure that they're heard. So regardless of what the outcome is, you may still end up disagreeing. But it's really important for people to at least understand. And so it's staying curious in difficult conversation, having the wherewithal to understand your frustration is there, your bitterness might be there, your anxiousness might be there, but to calm down, ask good questions to better understand where that person's coming from. And then you're in a better mode to solve the problem. And by the way, things are usually way less emotional than you thought they were when the initial issue was brought up.
Yeah. And I think about some of the top, you think about Fortune 500 companies, some of those that are ranked in the top 5 for best places to work. The reason why they're so successful is because of the people. And these CEOs who lead these organizations, they're very aware of what are my team members, my employees, my leaders, what are they telling me? And a lot of that is curiosity. They ask for surveys to be filled out. Tell us what we can do better. And that there's a reason for that, because they lead through understanding what their teams are telling them. They're open to hearing feedback, and it's reciprocal. It's not just leading by dictatorship. It's really empowering your employees to let their voice be heard. And that's all about building the relationship. Those companies, they typically have less turnover. They have better results because their team members are happy. And that's, once again, a big part of being a successful leader, is helping your team understand that you're in it with them. It's that whole servant leadership approach.
What are some things that people say when they've identified their manager lacks emotional intelligence? But maybe they don't know what emotional intelligence really is and the definition of it. But what is it? What are some of the things that managers do that indicate to us? You've had great managers. You've had managers that maybe were not so great. And you've probably had managers that were everywhere in between. And so have I. What are some of the indicators when the people around you are communicating? What are some of the things that people say that might make you think, oh, wow, that person might lack a little emotional intelligence?
Yeah, the first one I can think of is going into a performance review and the leader immediately telling them what they've done wrong and telling them all of the things that they believe are the gaps, the opportunities, and not simply asking questions to uncover the reason for maybe their lack of performance, right? Not achieving some of the results that they committed to, the goals. It all comes down to a reciprocal relationship, but that's immediately when you can tell that a leader lacks that emotional intelligence. It's they tell versus ask.
Yeah, they lose their curiosity in a lot of ways. Have you ever been on a team where not everybody really gave feedback very effectively? Maybe it was a culture of a lack of feedback. That's another sign too, that maybe several people on the team, yourself included, might lack emotional intelligence. If there's a lack of willingness to provide feedback. Emotional intelligence it's a long-term investment in your career and your success. And there's a lot of things that you can do very specifically for the short term that can help you with emotional intelligence. There's also a lot of things you can do in the long term. So whether or not you're a young business professional, maybe an individual contributor, a salesperson, you work with clients, you work with customers, there are ways that you can combat this stuff, short term and long term. So let's talk about some of those methods. You can immediately start doing some things to improve your emotional intelligence right away. Number one, is everything about to do with identifying your emotions real time. Listening to this podcast, journaling your emotions in the moment, identifying when you're frustrated, when you're anxious, that alone is a huge step, as opposed to just feeling that emotions, having the wherewithal to stop and go, okay, I'm frustrated, stop. Right there, you've made a gain in your emotional intelligence because you're in the moment. You're able to identify the emotion in the moment, and that is key. So that's something you can do the very next pressure-packed situation you find yourself in, the very next time you're frustrated.
You can even do that in your personal life. Start now, right? Whether you're a parent or you're on the road and you're thinking about, I haven't eaten all day, and you start to feel that hangry coming on. That's identifying an emotion. Okay, what can I do? Go get something to eat. Your kids are in the car, they're screaming in the back, and you're about to lose it. I'm going to pull this car over here. And we've all been there for parents. Yeah. Identifying that emotion and what can I do to decompress and figure out ways to solve this without yelling.
I could practice that almost every other day with a 4-year-old in the house. No doubt about it. And part of that, okay, here's another thing you can do right away. Pause. We say this a lot when we talk about presentation and communication skills. Man, this helps you in the moment with emotional intelligence. That's why the audience respects it so much when you're communicating, is to pause, because it shows subconsciously, even if you don't understand the definition of emotional intelligence, the audience will still understand and feel that emotional intelligence subconsciously when you just pause. And it allows you to become more curious. So turn the frustration or anxiety into questions. You can do that the very next time that you feel yourself getting this way. Maybe it's a public forum. Maybe it's a team meeting. Maybe you're running a team meeting and right out of the gate, someone on your team starts to ask questions or challenges the agenda or wants to start going down a rabbit hole that you weren't prepared to go down. You only have a few hours to get your team together, and you're talking about stuff you didn't expect to talk about. It's frustrating you because now you're off topic. Or maybe you're with your child and they start having a meltdown at the grocery store and you're not ready for it. You don't have that much time. You got to get back to the house to get dinner ready, and all those things start to add up. Pause, identify your emotion, and you'll start to make better decisions naturally just from doing those things. You can also substitute some phrasing right away. Instead of blaming other people, maybe it's your significant other, maybe it's a coworker. Even if you're not even saying this stuff out loud, you're just thinking it and you're thinking, you know what, you always, that puts the blame on someone else. That takes away your power to solve the problem. And emotionally intelligent people don't lose the power to solve the problem. And so you can change that. Next time you start thinking, you know what, you always think about the fact of, you know what, I notice that change in language. I notice tension in our team meetings versus you always make things stressful. I notice tension in our team meetings puts you in a position to start solving the problem as there's tension versus blaming it on someone else and then hoping that the problem gets solved. Guess what? The next team meeting is probably going to have tension as well if you're blaming other people. And then lastly, in the moment, you can check your physical cues. What's your body language like? Do you feel tense? Are your shoulders tense? Your hands? Is your eye contact wandering because you're not paying attention to the person? Those are all physical cues that help you identify, wait a second, my emotional intelligence is lacking here. There frustration's taking over, anxiety's taking over, nerves are taking over. That's another sign to get yourself back on track emotionally. Take a deep breath, pause, ask more questions.
Those are great short-term solutions, Scott. So I'm just going to highlight a few longer-term solutions that folks can take away from today. The first one I think about is journaling. 5 minutes of journaling every day. Just write down your thoughts, type out your thoughts. What did I feel today? Why did I feel that way? And how did I respond? The more that you journal this and think about it, think through it, the more that becomes a consistent approach in your everyday life, in the moment when you're having those difficult conversations, you're having those high emotions, that will help to bring you back to, what am I feeling? Why? How do I fix this? How do I respond to this? So that's the first one. The second one I like to think about is empathy and giving somebody uninterrupted time to talk about their feelings, right? 60 seconds. Don't just immediately come to them with a fix or a solution. Give them that time and just listen. Just be a good listener. So anytime you're in a conversation and there's emotions that start to flow, how can I just pause and let somebody just talk to me without interrupting or coming with a solution? Another one is role-playing, skill practicing. That's a lot of how you get better at something, right? We use the sports analogy a lot of the time. It's like these elite athletes, they go through, they practice. It's the same concept. So whether it is you want to practice with somebody you're comfortable with, that could be your wife, that could be your leader that you trust. That could be something as simple as an AI tool that we talked about with Replica. That's an AI coach that can help you. Whatever it might be, is take the time to practice it. If you experience a situation in your daily routine, at the end of the day, let's go back, let's revisit that. You journal it. Let's actually skill practice that with your significant other or your AI coach with Replica. So those are just a few things that you can do long term. Commit to one relationship that you might be able to repair. How powerful can that be? You think about somebody who maybe you've burned a bridge in the past. You don't get along with a colleague, a peer. Maybe it's somebody that works for you or you work for. How can you repair that relationship? And just, again, talk through it. Have a conversation. Show that you care enough. Ask them for a little bit of time to sit down and talk about, hey, how can we repair this relationship? Again, we're all human. We all want to get along with one another. We have different views and maybe different styles, different strengths, opportunities, but just sit down and just have a conversation and try and repair that relationship.
So those are some short-term ways now that you can fix your emotional intelligence, work on your emotional intelligence, and those are also some key longer-term methods. Because if we all want to advance ourselves, whether it's to achieve more career success by moving up a corporate ladder, whether you're an entrepreneur that's trying to build a business, whether or not you're a younger professional with a brand new team of people and you're trying to learn how to be a leader, a more impactful, motivational leader, no matter where you are in your journey, there's a lot of benefits for you to become an emotionally intelligent person. So we talked a lot about emotional intelligence today, Dave. We talked about a few things: self-awareness, how to identify when you're going through those periods where your emotional intelligence might be a little weaker. We talked about the emotions that you can specifically look for. We talked about emotional regulation and how that ties to awareness and self-awareness. You have to regulate those feelings in the moment more effectively.
Yeah. So those are the two key factors into your own personal emotional intelligence. And then there's the social aspect that we talked about, which is simply like the empathy that you show, right? Caring about other people's emotions, and then building relationships, a really effective relationships using your emotional intelligence. And a lot of that is just letting folks talk to you, right? Not being quick to respond, not quickly getting irritated and expressing those emotions to that other individual. And so those four components of emotional intelligence, if you take the time to practice through the short-term and long-term solutions that we provided, then you will be a more effective leader in your emotional intelligence.
Awesome. Until the next podcast, this is Scott.
And I'm Dave.
Signing off from DaSco Learning.